shy. Sorry for the delays, but this is the video. The Peru and Egyptian similarities. Alright, so in this video we're gonna be looking over the similarities in Egypt and Peru and why are they so similar. Alright, so check it out. Alright, so I want you to check out this video real quick, found on YouTube. It shows the similarities between Egypt and Peru. So you see it says they were never in contact, right? Alright. This is where the mix-up comes from shows like Ancient Aliens and other things that just are just weird. So remember, it says we're never in contact. So the person who made this video is claiming through shows like Ancient Aliens and stuff like that there was some other divine thing going on. But we're going to take a look at some of the videos and some of the similarities, and then I'll let you guys get back to it. Alright, so let's look at some scriptures. Starting with Exodus 1:11. Therefore, they did set over them taskmasters to afflict them with their burdens, and they built for Pharaoh treasure cities, Pithom and Ramses. Right, so we see that they built the pyramids and the cities for Ramses when they were in Egypt. Right, we see that they didn't only build the cities, but they built the pyramids also, and we'll get into that in the next scripture. But this is just showing you that they did build cities. They were builders, right? Okay. First Maccabees 13:25-28. Then sent Simon and took the bones of Jonathan his brother and buried them in Modin, the city of his fathers, and all Israel made great lamentation for him, all Israel, right? And bewailed him many days. Simon also built a monument upon the sepulchre of his father and his brethren, and raised it aloft to the sight. He hewn stone behind and before. Moreover, he set up 7 pyramids, once against another, for his father, his mother, and his 4 brethren. Let's read that again. Moreover, he set up 7 pyramids. And who was all there? All Israel. Israel was the one who was building these pyramids. So yes, they had knowledge of building the cities and pyramids. Who the heck you think built the temple and King Solomon's temple and everything? And the first, this is they had the knowledge of building. They built pyramids and they built cities. Well, hold on, right? Because now we're trying to see the comparison of Peru and Egypt. So when doing a comparison between Peru, or let's just say the Incas and the Egyptians, there's a missing link, right? That missing link is the Israelites. They are the Israelites. The Israelites were the ones who were raised in Egypt and learned how to build and do things like that while in Egypt. We see that throughout the whole Bible how they were builders. The 2 scriptures that I just showed you definitely prove that they built pyramids and cities. So now we're trying to connect that missing link. So we see that the Israelites are that missing link. All right. Now you start to wonder, well, how can that missing link be? How can the Peruvians be Israelites? Well, we're gonna go into that right now. So right here is a map of Peru, and if you notice, Ecuador, Colombia, and Brazil are all surrounding it, correct? Alright. In the book I'm about to show you, it says Quito, right? But Quito is Ecuador. That's a part of Ecuador, but notice how Ecuador and Peru both got the same type of name for a place. Alright? So check it out. This here is the book of Lost Tribes and Promised Lands. So in here I went through this in the first part, in Northern Kingdom first part, and we if you want you could go back and check it out. But here is some information of this book that talks about being in Ecuador, right? That talks about a guy and man. We're gonna go through the book and we're gonna check it out and see, all right? So you can see for yourself. So page 396, I believe, it says, in September 1644, a Portuguese Marano named Antonio de Montesinos arrived in after them, right? Let me check it out. It says, 2.5 years before, he told them while traveling in the wild mountains of Quito. Again, Quito is Ecuador, right? So he's talking about a situation that happened when he was in Ecuador. Pay attention, Montesinos, right? So remember, that's Ecuador, right? So it says, when he was over there, there was a guide, and the guide was telling him suffering they had undergone at the hands of the Spaniards. When he asked him to explain why they thought such a thing, they had replied mysteriously that it was because we so badly treated a holy people. So he's talking about the Spaniards, what they did to the indigenous people, right? That they were a holy people. So look at this. It goes, one day he was in jail and he was praying, right? And he goes, blessed be the name of the Lord thy God, who has not made me an idolater, a barbarian, a Negro, an Indian. When suddenly be stopped, those Indians, he told himself, they are Hebrews. So this also goes back into another page in this same book that talks about how Christopher Columbus brought over a Hebrew translator. But if Columbus thought he was going to China or India, why did he bring a Hebrew translator, right? Okay, and that's in part 2 of Northern Kingdom, so you can go check that out. So anyway, he plans to go back to the rugged mountains that he saw those Indians, right? And it goes, two men were soon back in the rugged mountains in which Francisco had made his initial revelation. This was in the mountains of Quito in Ecuador, right? So then, if you come down to the bottom over here, to the middle paragraph, second paragraph, it says, waving a banner high in the air, the Indian guide soon was greeted by a puff of smoke far beyond the other bank of the river. In response to his signal, the two men waited. Eventually, a canoe appeared, bearing 3 men and a woman, all of them Indians, right? So the people that came on the canoe were Indians. And so then it goes, upon hearing her words, they rose, went over to Montesinos, and to his utter astonishment said, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Elohinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. They have recited in Hebrew the fundamental credo of Judaism. So boom, they spoke Hebrew. This goes against why Columbus would bring a Hebrew translator, right? So they spoke Hebrew. So let's see, let's look a little deeper, right? So it says, they told them that they were themselves of the tribe of Reuben and that the tribe of Joseph lived on an island nearby. I mean, damn, how much more proof you need, right? Like, they saying it themselves, that they from the tribe of Reuben and that the tribe of Joseph lives right across the island. Like, on the other island over there. I mean, come on, like, this is proof itself. But we're going to show more proof that they spoke Hebrew, right? We even know, I'm even going to show you how they kept customs. But we focusing on Peru, right? So Ecuador is border Peru. The Incas took over that whole area from Peru all the way up to Ecuador, even into some parts of Brazil and Colombia. This is the whole reason why I'm bringing up Ecuador and I'm bringing up Peru. Why the men that were in the mountains of Ecuador bumped into these Hebrews, because the Incas ruled that whole area all the way from Peru into Ecuador, even parts of Brazil and Colombia. Alright, so we here at the Encyclopedia Britannica online, right? Alright, so when you look up Peru, when you look up history, it talks about the Inca. Alright? So let's read something. It says, like the Aztecs, the Inca came late upon the historical scene. Even their legends do not predate 1200 CE. So okay, so first let's hold on for a minute. With that being said, all you people out there, especially you lost sheep Hispanics that say that the Aztecs and the Incas and Mayans, they were there for 10,000s of years. This right here, your own white man science, disproves that. Okay? You guys haven't even been there over 2,000 years. So stop. Alright? So let's just stop with the denial of who the Hispanics are. Alright? And we're gonna go into it further. So it says, like the Aztec, the Inca came late upon the historical scene. Even their legends do not predate 1200 CE, with the supposed arrival in Cusco of the first emperor, Manco Capac. Like old world peoples and unlike other aboriginal Americas, the Inca recounted their history by kingly reigns. Most of the accounts agree on 13 emperors. Right? The first 7 emperors were legendary, local, and of slight importance. Their traditions are full of impossible and probable events, especially those of Manco Capac, the founder of the dynasty. In this period, the Inca were a small tribe, one of many. Right? One of many. So let's keep reading. Let's come down over here. It says, the sudden expansion of the Inca Empire was one of the most extraordinary events of history. It covered a little less than a century. From the ascension of Pachacu, son, in 1438 to the conquest by Francisco Pizarro in 1532. Right? But let's read over here. It says, after there was a little effect resistance, the peoples to the north were subjugated as far as Quito, Ecuador. And so remember, Quito in Ecuador, right? Those where Francisco and the Lost Tribes of Promised Land made their encounter with the Hebrew-speaking Indians, correct? Okay. So watch this. It says, including the powerful and cultured kingdom of Chimu on the northern coast of Peru. Northern coast of Peru. So from Ecuador all the way to Peru, right? And now watch this. Topa Inca then took over his father's role and turned southward, conquering all of northern Chile. Watch this. The southernmost limit of the empire. His son Jaino Capac continued conquest in Ecuador to the Ancasmayo River, the present border between Ecuador and Colombia. Right? So it was Chile, Ecuador, Peru, Colombia. All that was owned or ran by the Incas. So you see when in Quito in the mountains of Ecuador he ran into those people that were speaking Hebrew. But now we're gonna show you that even in Peru they were speaking Hebrew and following even the Most High. Watch, I'm gonna show you. Here we go. So now that we proved that there was Hebrew speaking Indians on this side of the world when Columbus came and the conquistadors and everything, we proved that there were some people, especially in Ecuador, right? Through the book Tribes and Promised Lands. So I want you to take a look at this other book called the 10 Tribes of Israel, where we're going to prove that even Peru were speaking Hebrew and held Hebrew customs. Alright, so in this book, The 10 Tribes of Israel by Barbara Ann Simon, she quotes some of Bartholomew de la Casa's work, some of his writings. And for all you that don't know who Bartholomew de la Casas is, he was a Spanish conquistador. And so I'm going to show you some information on this man before we get into this book so that you can see that he did write these things. And I might quote some of his book or some of his work in the other book. I'll show you though. Okay. All right. So over here on Britannica.com, we have a biography of Bartholomew de la Casas, right? So for all y'all that don't know, de la Casas was a Spaniard conqueror, right? So let's read something real quick. It says the apologetica and the destruction. So I want come over here. He goes. 4 years later, while serving as prior of the Covenant of Puerto Plata, a town in northern Santo Domingo, he began to write the Historia Apologetica, one of his major works. The Apologetica was to serve as the introduction to his masterpiece Historia de las Indias. Right? It says the Historia, which by his request was not published until after his death, is an account of all that had happened in the Indies, just as he has seen or heard of it. But rather than a chronicle, it is a prophetic interpretation of events. The purpose of all the facts he sets forth is the exposure of the sin of domination, oppression, and injustice that the European was inflicting upon the newly discovered peoples. Alright, so he was a writer. Alright, so in the book, The 10 Tribes of Israel by Barbara Ann Simon, she quotes an expert from one of La Casa's books. So the quote is, La Casas affirms that in Haiti, now Santo Domingo, the inhabitants spoke corrupt Hebrew. So this is just a bonus. This is just letting us know that even in Santo Domingo, they were speaking Hebrew. So we don't only have Ecuador, we have many, many miles away in Santo Domingo. All right, so here we go. And they were speaking this before the Spaniards came. So the Spaniards didn't bring the Hebrew language with them. They already knew the Hebrew language. All right, so it says the northern tribes have preserved in many cases the primitive Yahweh and also Hallelujah. Vegas affirms that Hali was the Peruvian term for praise or triumph. So the Peruvians spoke Hebrew. All right. Eight Youth writes Vega, who was a descendant of the Incas. So those people who were there were Incas. If they spoke Hebrew, then the Incas spoke Hebrew. All right. And it says, let's go down to the highlighted section. It says, the reasons why the Peruvians did not like some of the northern tribes compound Hali with Yah might have been on account of extreme veneration which they had for the inedible name. So they even praised the name Yah so much that they didn't even like mixing Yah with anything else. So this is crazy. It just goes to show you that they did speak Hebrew and they did worship Yahweh. All praises, man. All praises. Let's keep getting it though. All right, so in this same book, on page 35, it says the Peruvians, when first discovered by the Spaniards, had attained a high degree of civilization. So, just like Egypt, just like when they were in Egypt, they had the civilization, they knew civilization. And even after Egypt, they knew civilization when they were building the temples and had their kingdoms. So it says the Peruvians were first discovered by the Spaniards, had attained a high degree of civilization, and it would appear from a passage of Gomara's History of the Indies that the Spaniards were struck with the resemblance of some of the tribes of India to the Jews. They were all very like Jews in appearance and voice, for they have large noses and speak through the throat. On page 34, it says Garcia, which was another writer, another Spaniard writer, who says Garcia in his famous treatise on the origin of the Indies says in the 232nd page, introduction to the third book, many have supposed, and the Spaniards generally who reside in the Indians believe, that the Indians proceed from the 10 tribes who were lost in the time of Salmanassar, king of Assyria. All right, and we're going to get into the scriptures of what Garcia is talking about. And we'll get into that in a minute. It says, this opinion is grounded on the disposition, nature, and customs of the Indians, which they found very similar to those of the Hebrews. I nevertheless have bestowed great diligence upon the verification of this truth. I can affirm that I have labored in this more than in any other part of my work, and from what I have found thereto relating, I shall say such foundations for the edifice and structure of this hypothesis as well be able to contain its weight. The entire of Garcia's third book of the origin of the Indies treats accordingly of the likeness which in their laws, their customs, their moral qualities and habits, their ceremonies, sacrifices, and inclinations to idolatry, and even in their early history, the two nations bore to each other. So they were very similar to the Hebrews. And how is that? How is that possible? Unless these people were Hebrews. So like I said again, I'm going to bring out the information where it says, up on the first highlighted section where it says, from the 10 tribes who were lost in the time of Salmanassar, king of Assyria. So that information could be found in 2nd Esdras. So let's read 2nd Esdras. Alright, so how did the Israelites end up in the Americas? Alright, so we look at 2nd Esdras chapter 13, verse 40 to 46. And verse 40 says, those are the 10 tribes which are carried away prisoners out of their own land in the time of Hosea the king, whom Salmanassar the king of Assyria led away captive. Remember, in the book, Garcia said that these Indians were closely related to the 10 tribes from Salmanasseh, the king of Assyria, when he led them away captive. So it says Salmanasseh, the king of Assyria, led away captive, and he carried them over the waters, so they came they into another land. All right, so it says, led away captive, he carried them over the waters, and so came they into another land. The other land that they're talking about is the land of Assyria. It says, but they took this counsel among themselves that they would leave the multitude of the heathen and go forth into a further country wherever mankind dwelt. So this is talking about when they were in Syria, they were freed. After some time, they were freed. So when they were freed, they decided to go to a land where no man dwelt. And remember, the whole Indies, Asia, Africa, Europe, all that was populated except for the Western world. So verse 42 says that they might there keep their statues which they never kept in their own land. So they didn't want to go back to Israel because they knew in Israel they would just fall again. Verse 43, and they entered in Euphrates by the narrow places of the river. So for y'all that don't know where the Euphrates is at, the Euphrates is within Syria and Iraq, which was ancient Assyria. So they took the Euphrates around Africa and into the Western world. Verse 44, for the Most High then showed signs for them, and held still the flood till they were passed over. For through that country there was a great way to go, namely of a year and a half, and the same region is called Arsareth. Alright, so for all you guys that are just looking at this, for the new people that are looking at this, you guys can refer to Northern Kingdom Part 1, 2, and 3 to understand what Arsareth is, to understand how Christopher Columbus identified this place with America, and to understand how Columbus used Second Esdras to find the Americas and to find also the lost tribes of Israel, which he brung a Hebrew translator with him. All right, so just look at those parts and you'll understand everything that I'm talking about here if you don't understand already. All right, so another way you could tell Israelites is through the curses that the Bible speaks of. So let's go into more further proof and prove through these curses that these people of Peru, the indigenous people of Peru, are in fact Israelites. Alright, so I want you to take a look at this about Peru in Encyclopedia Britannica, right? So it's ethnic groups, right? And it says the Quechua Indians constitute almost half of Peru's population. Mestizos, which is a person of mixed Indian and European descent, slightly less than 1/3. Alright? And people of any European ancestry. So there's a small population of a mixture, right? So everybody thinks that most of Peru or most of these Hispanic nations are straight up Spaniards. Well, according to this right here, this proves you wrong. So there are indigenous people there that make up most of the population. You just got a small percent that's mixed. All right. Now let's look at this. Watch this. It goes, modern Peru's complex ethnic mosaic is rooted in its history. The Spanish conquerors dominated the indigenous Indians and colonial Peruvian society, including politics, religion, and economics. They brought their European culture, the Spanish language, and the Roman Catholic religion to the region. Alright, and we'll look at this. The Spaniards introduced some African slaves, but the number of slaves transported to this part of South America was not significant. So a small amount of slaves. Judah. Alright? But let's look at this where it says they brought their European culture, the Spanish language, and the Roman Catholic religion to the region. That's the curses. Let's take a look at that. The first curse is Deuteronomy 28:49. And it says, the Lord shall bring a nation against thee from far, from the end of the earth, as swift as the eagle flieth, a nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand. That nation that came from afar was the Europeans. Were the Spaniards. Right? and it goes as swift as an eagle flieth. The emblem for the Spaniards was the eagle. All right, it was a black eagle that they had on the flag before the modern flag. And it says, a nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand. We ain't understand a word they were saying. They brung that Spanish with them. We were in speaking Spanish, like I proved in the video. We was already speaking Hebrew, so we ain't understand what that Spanish stuff was. We adopted that language, right? Okay, let's look at the next verse. Verse 64. And it says, and the Lord shall scatter thee among all people, from the one end of the earth even unto the other. And if anybody knows anything about the Taino history, they will know that many of the indigenous people were put on boats and sent back to Spain, even Africa, different parts of Europe, to serve in slavery. All right? And it goes, and there thou shalt serve other gods. There as well is the place where the Spaniards came, which is the indigenous lands of the Americas. And it says, and there thou shalt serve other gods. This is when they brung their religion with them, when the white Jesus and everything. Right? And it says, which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone. Many indigenous people are infatuated with the cross, with statues, idolatry, period. Right? And that's exactly what that is. Alright, over here it says, differences in lifestyles and attitudes are pronounced. Pronounced, that means it's easy to spot an indigenous from a mixed one. Alright, it says Peruvians of Spanish descent and mestizos live mainly along the coast and control most of the country's wealth. Typically, a small group of people of European ancestry hold the main power in government and industry. So you see that? European ancestry hold the power in government and in industry. Alright, so let's look at that curse. Alright, so Deuteronomy 28:43 to 46, right? So the first one is 43. The stranger that is within thee shall get up above thee very high, and thou shalt come down very low. So it says the stranger that is within thee, meaning the stranger who is now on your land, right? Who is now amongst you, which is the Spaniards, shall get up above thee very high, meaning they should be above you. And thou shalt come down very low, and you will be below them. How would they be above you and you be below them? Let's look at the next one. The next one is 44. He shall lend to thee, and thou shalt not lend to him. He shall be the head, and thou shalt be the tail. So when it says he shall lend to thee, and thou shalt not lend to him, meaning that he will control the finances. And what's going on in every so-called Hispanic country is being ran by Spaniards. Right? Not by the indigenous, but by the Spaniards. And it says, he shall lend to thee, and thou shalt not lend to him. He shall be the head, and thou shalt be the tail. Meaning he runs the financial system while you are the slave working for him. Okay? Verse 45. Moreover, all these curses shall come upon thee, and shall pursue thee and overtake thee, till thou be destroyed, because thou hearkenest not unto the voice of the Lord thy God to keep his commandments and his statutes which he commanded thee. So remember, again, it says, moreover, all these curses shall come upon thee, and shall pursue thee and overtake thee, till thou be destroyed. Not destroyed life-wise, which, yes, most of us were destroyed, but destroyed mentally, meaning brainwashed into following the religion that these people brung with the white Jesus, the cross, the statues, the idolatry, everything else. And even though we were already doing that, this is the reason why we fell to them. And this is the reason why we're so acceptable to their religion, because we was already breaking the commandments and into idolatry. Right? Verse 46, and they shall be upon thee for a sign and for a wonder, and upon thy seed forever. So the sign that shall be upon thee is the sign of being a broken people, being idolatrous people, cursed people. These are the attributes that you need to look into the Hispanic people to say, who are they? And when you look into it and you look into the curses, you do see that these people are the true Israelites that the Bible speaks of.